All right. Well, I guess what I could start off with is while I think the movie theater in some ways is declining and that it should be preserved, and I also think that the rapid pace of technological advancement is definitely scary and too close for comfort. I think that when some people say you're being cheated out of a movie experience by watching it on a phone can come across as annoyingly purist because there are legitimately some people who cannot focus on watching a movie where there are distractions, like people laughing spontaneously without warning, or children running around without much parent supervision. So when people say that, I almost feel like they never take into consideration people with mental stuff going on that makes it really hard to focus on watching a movie in a movie theater. Case in point, the example with Wicked, like when that crap came out, everybody would just not shut up on the whole, like everybody would just keep on singing to the songs. And apparently it got so bad that they had to create an entirely different sing-along event just to accommodate these eccentric weirdos who just like if you want to listen to the songs, if you want to sing along to the songs, listen to the album. Why are you doing it in an open theater? Like this is a movie theater, not a church service.
Well, it's not only because of that, but it's also because these people who sing along to the song to the movie, like they've known the story of Wicked for many years. So they just feel like, oh, I get to finally get my time and my experience with the story that I've loved for over 20 years.
Yeah.
They also did that with Frozen. Like people would go see Frozen, and then Frozen had the whole sing along thing too. So
Yeah.
you're not wrong.
Yeah,
So
and it's because the songs for Frozen were so catchy, and because in Wicked's case that was a musical for a good like decade or two. That's one reason. Another reason too. That's why people were singing along to the songs. We've been kind of doing this. Disney at least has been kind of doing this with a lot of their movies, where they will have like I guess they'll make options in their DVD extras. We don't see it in like theater versions. I think that's a little bit of a newer tech. I think it actually might not. I think it actually it's hard to remember off the top of my head, but I think I've heard about like sing along versions like dating back further. But it's not like this isn't a common practice, but the fact that this is such an event type thing for like Frozen or Wicked, all these type of big like musical theater type movies, because that's you especially gotta blame Disney, especially in the Renaissance era, Disney Renaissance era, for making most, if not all, their movies, their big movies, musicals, half musicals. So that you kind of goes hand in hand, when their whole Renaissance era was basically making movies for Broadway or making movies for theater. That's why you got Lion King on Broadway. Hercules got a stage show recently. I actually do like that stage show. Obviously, Aladdin. There was a guy from Bay City. There was a guy from Bay City who was on the I think it was on the Broadway production of Aladdin recently, which is pretty good. That's really
nice.
cool for him. Um, yeah. So it's just kind of, especially with the Renaissance era, it just kind of these movies, especially the ones with all the musical numbers, these movies are made for Broadway. And sometimes that can bleed back into movies made on Broadway, and all this kind of stuff can be made into movies with, you know, old musical numbers, and you're gonna have these theater kids singing along to it. It just
Yeah.
kind of it's a given.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but then again, not everyone who goes to these movies are like gonna
Or
automatically
they're
want
not
to
theater
sing
kids.
along to everything. It's like they're not
Yeah,
theater kids.
yeah, you're just
Well,
vibing in the movie, and then you hear somebody like blurting out Alphabet song. It's like,
defying gravity.
yeah, defy, shut up. You know, it's
Eternally.
like they're doing it very loudly externally, and sometimes it's like literally in the seat next to you, and you're like, shh. you want to say, obviously you can't. You want to say shut up, So, but you
I mean,
can't.
when
Listen to
I
the album.
I mean, when I saw Wicked with my friend back in the part one and back in November
Uh-huh.
this past year, it was my first time ever experiencing the story of Wicked.
Hmm.
Like, I never saw the Broadway show. My friend loved the Broadway show. She was telling me about it and everything. And I was like, you know what? I want to experience it with her because she loved the story so much. And it makes sense. And this kind of leads into the subject of the whole going to movies with friends, which is why it's so great,
Yeah.
because you get to experience those stories with people who have cared about those stories for so long and are
Yeah.
excited to
Yeah.
see where to go.
Yeah, because and I do think it's funny. Aside, not really a tangent because it's about Wicked, but then I'm gonna go into the Friends part. Is I do find it funny if some of these people who haven't seen Wizard of Oz at all or don't understand the context of the story of Wicked,
That's right.
knowing two core characters to the Wizard cast are end up be are actually characters in the Wicked cast. So I can't say who it is unless they know. But
Yeah.
I do really think, and I've been doing this with Tabby for about 15 years, ever since we started going out and as long as the MCU's been out, we go
Mhm.
see the movies every year. And Tabby's had this thing where she really likes the hot actors or whatever. And then I'm like the big comic nerd. Like I know these things and
Mhm.
I don't get ticked off on people when they change the stuff. But like, you know, when somebody doesn't know like the source material
Mhm.
for things or doesn't know the history of like the franchise and they are invested in a way, you know, they get invested in a different way and you get invested because it's like, oh, this is my hyperfixation and they're like, oh, I like this movie because like these three different things and I'm like, oh, I really like this movie because how they worked on this character, blah 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 blah. It's like
Yeah.
we seen Thunderbolts not that long ago.
Mhm.
And Tabby likes how they, did the void and everything in the way she
Mhm.
does with an emotional part. I really like how they did the void where it's kind of like an emotional high low type thing. So it's not I'm not going on the tangent about the movie. I'm more talking about how like we both experience it in a different way. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of bummed because they did a 20th anniversary Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith, and I so wanted to see that with my best friend a couple
Mhm.
like when it came out, but I couldn't go to the showing, so I'm so mad. I'm
Um,
so mad, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, at least for me, I don't really go to movie theater that much. Probably because I don't have a whole lot of friends, at least in real life, but or at least like nearby. But I
Us.
I think that at the times where I would want to go to a movie theater is like for movies I actually really legitimately want to see in theaters. Like the movie that I saw recent, like the last time I went to a theater, the one that I saw was The Wild Robot because that was a movie that I
Mhm.
really, really wanted to see. And yeah.
Yeah.
And I also don't really go to movie theaters that much anyway because and this actually goes into the conflict of streaming service and going to the theater is that you hear cases online about, oh, X movie is bad, don't see it, and all this stuff. And it's like, and especially with the recent output of mediocre movies, it's like people don't want to waste their time watching a mediocre movie that it's gonna be mediocre. So, but at the same time, it's kind of that I know it's a bit of a meme, but there's a reason it's a bit of a meme But the phrase watch more movies and shows at least has some merit to it because you at
Hmm.
least actually physically see what good and bad writing looks like. It's
True.
kind of weird, really.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, there's some great filmmakers and there's some great filmmakers who don't have a good script. And then there's
Yeah.
people who have a good script and they have a terrible director. So
That's
it's
also,
kind of that, yeah.
yeah, there's also like situations where it's a really bad movie. And the reason it's a really bad movie is like it might be a bad script, bad director. The actor might be a great actor, but
Hmm.
you can only act around. I think I've said this before. You can only act so good around a shit script. Sorry, I swore. But you know, you can only act so good around a really bad script. So it's
Yeah.
like it really just kind of depends. I will say, sorry, a little bit of phlegm. There was one movie I didn't go see, which unfortunately I've been seeing clips on TikTok, and it does make me want to go see the movie in theaters. Is I
Hmm.
want to see that movie Sinners in theaters.
Hmm.
Like I feel like that movie specifically just is kind of built for like a theater experience. You know what I mean?
And I
Like,
think
mm,
and I think that's what movie theaters and filmmakers are forgetting is there's so much about because I remember a while ago I watched a video where they were talking about like movies are being made for small screens now. They're not being made for the broader like screen. So, I
yeah,
mean, that's why
yes.
movie theaters even happened years ago because, they were trying to make the movies bigger and broader. And now they're trying to make movies where you can fit them anywhere you want.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, actually, and that's the thing is like things in the 80s or 70s upward or it's to the 90s and a little bit of today, like the movies were huge for spectacle, all these types of things, like they were huge events. And
Yeah,
now, so like something you just said, John, is that
mhm,
they're making phones so you can just like watch them. Yeah,
on the screen.
they're making movies so you can just watch them on your phone screen. It's like
yeah.
it's the colors, it's all this kind of stuff. It's like, I don't want the movie to be like dark as crap,
Hmm.
but I also don't want it to be like made specifically so it can be watched on a phone screen. Because that
Hmm.
kind of defeats the purpose of me going to a movie if I'm going to be watching it on a phone screen. There was
This is
another thing. What? Oh,
oh, this is why I at least try to watch movies and shows on like my TV
Hmm.
yeah.
because at least that's as close as I'm gonna get.
But that's another thing is that they do the same thing with some of these TV shows nowadays or these streaming shows. It's like they make it's I think it's both lit and like framed so you can watch it on your phone screen. It's like I want something that has experimental framing, all this like stuff that's not just meant for me to watch while I'm playing like Subway Racers or whatever. I don't play Subway
Which
Racers,
brings me
but
to another
you get the
question.
joke about that.
Which brings me to another question for both of you. Have you guys experienced a 4D movie in the theater?
I
I've never done
I
it.
I
I
have two or three
actually
times.
Oh,
I actually had at one point, but it was
hmm.
a really long time ago. And the
Hmm.
first time that happened, like it happened when I was like really little. But
Oh,
but when that happened, I was terrified of
Me
that, and
too.
I didn't want to be a part of this. No, I don't like it. Get me out of here.
I will say,
yeah.
I will
But
say,
but
oh,
I did I don't know if it's tough to be a bug at like one of the Disney parks. I don't know, but I don't know if that counts. But that's another 4D movie that I
I was gonna
saw, but
say,
I don't know.
I was gonna say, I think two of those experiences were like ride experiences. When I was very little, I went to Disney World, and I think I went to go to the It's Tough to Be a Bug ride, and this is very topical because it closes today. Muppet Vision 3D Muppet
Oh,
Vision 3D is closing
Oh,
today, and that was one of the 4D shows I remember going to. And that's a sad thing. And we
yeah.
can go on a
oh, that's
whole
not
like Muppet conversation, not literally, but you know what I mean, like
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
The
like,
art of it. We can go on that in a whole another conversation, but it's like, yeah, it's that experience of like being in that theater where they want to like fully immerse you in the story. They got Statler and Waldorf like over in the balcony. They got like other people in the other balconies. They got the Swedish chef at the projector firing a gun at the little, like 3D Muppet dude on the TV on the big screen and Kermit coming out of the screen. That is that is an experience made like a theater because that's their whole gimmick. The whole
Hmm.
gimmick of the Muppets in Muppet Vision 3D is the theater. And
Yes.
for the theater to kind of be, I really don't want it to be phased out, but it kind of feels like they want to try to phase out the theater a little bit. It's sad.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
yeah,
not to mention how feels like everything about the movie theater is getting so freaking expensive, like with the tickets, the food, and even with streaming services, to the point where it feels like just watching anything is becoming more and more exclusive to a
yeah,
specific group of people. And it's actually really upsetting to see. It's almost like they're trying to artificially create a problem to justify erasing something.
yeah,
But
yeah, that's another thing is,
Mhm.
it feels like very, yeah, movies are starting to feel a little bit more like a luxury now. Me and
That
Tabby, we
is,
go, what?
oh, sorry. Keep going.
Me and Tabby, we go to the theater, we're spending $20 on tickets, and then that's another further 20, $30 on like concessions. God forbid if we get like a specialty, item, for the movie, which I haven't gotten in years because those things cost like 20, $40 as it is. A family of four, three or four, that's like $100 to $120 right there in one day. For
Yeah.
2 hours, maybe three. So that it's very expensive. And I will say for an argument for streaming, even though I might argue against streaming later, is that you have the choice
Hmm.
compared to watching TV, like regular TV, and compared to going to a theater, is that you have a choice of what you're going to watch, and you can watch it on your own time, and you do pay for it. It does suck that they're adding ads to streaming services now, and you gotta pay a little bit more to not have the ads, but
oh
like
my gosh.
you have the accessibility of like basically watching whatever you want in the confines of who owns what and what they want you to watch. But yeah,
One of the
Like,
things, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, Black Mirror literally had an entire episode about the dangers of subscription services and how actually predatory they are.
Oh,
So
dang.
it's like, yeah.
One of the things I've noticed that a lot of people have been trending about is trying to do like a home theater thing. Like a way of not having to go to the theater. So
Oh
their answer
yeah.
is, well, you could just buy this like huge giant TV and it's just probably just about good as big and as good as a going to the theater. So that's everybody's answer now.
that
But
yeah, that's like a rich person's type thing. They have like a whole separate room for a giant silver screen or whatever. It's like freaking Back
Yeah,
to the
it feels
Future
like
Part Two. Back to the Future Part Two had that giant screen, and Marty Jr. is like getting all those like 20 different channels. Like that's kind of, I don't that might
yeah,
not be exactly what it feels like, but it kind of feels like that a little bit.
it's like
But
we're getting there. It's like
we're
we're
getting
yeah,
getting
close,
it
even though we're a decade after the movie took place.
but
yeah.
it just feels like everything is just, yeah, pricing out the peasants, it feels like. They're pricing out the peasants.
That's it. That's literally what it feels like because they are making it barely. It's hard. It's not an accessible
No.
thing nowadays for people unless they like save money or like you could be like in some couples that have like a um diff like when they can pay off a credit card, it's like, oh, we just pay off the credit card, let's go see a movie, you get some snacks or whatever, and then it's almost like $100 bucks out of their pocket right afterwards.
Honestly,
um,
whenever I think about going to a movie, I'm like, you know what? It's easier just for me to go to the freaking dollar store, buy my snacks at the dollar store, and then bring the snacks in my backpack or something.
That's a
And
thing. That's a thing I think
yeah,
I've been doing forever is like, and
yeah,
I know probably the theater attendants don't even care at this point.
they
You
don't care.
can be like basically holding like an empty bucket of popcorn with all your crap in it, and they're like, okay, go ahead. They don't
Yeah.
care at this point. Like even I've heard people say that they really don't care. You go into a movie theater with your coat and all that stuff with like stealthily carrying all the stuff in the movie. It's an
Yeah.
80-degree night or whatever. They don't care anymore. That's
And
that's
I
the
think
Yeah.
that's the state of it.
like I and like I said, I feel like I think they're just artificially creating a problem just to justify erasing its existence, which is really freaking manipulative and scummy and
Mhm.
all of that other things. But thankfully, I there are movie theaters that don't have outrageous pricing because the theater actually near me is like $6 a ticket. And that's a single screen theater from the late 1940s.
And
So in a
Yeah.
way, theaters like that, it's not even like just about like the movie going experience. It's about preserving that
Mm.
experience. It's about preserving just theaters, period.
yeah, and I
Yes.
I think it's really good that we're still trying. Like it's not very. You can see it. There's a theater about like 20-30 minutes away from me that's like 100-year-old theater that still screens like old movies or does like film festivals. We have a thing called Hell's Half Mile down over there. Like that they've been trying to keep that thing alive for years. Yeah, that's a here's one other thing about like movie theaters still kind of being part of like old theaters, um, or just theaters in general, is like this theater I'm specifically talking about, it's a one screen theater. That's how old it is. It still has the double like double layered seating where it's not like in modern movie theaters where it's the first front row. It's a really tiny row. You have to like crick your neck up just to look at the movie. And
Oh
then the
yeah.
rest of the rows is like straight ahead. No, it's a whole row going to the back, and then like you have to go up the stairs, and then there's another row of like the nosebleeds or whatever. I think that's what they call that area. Kind of like what they do in sports, with you have the nosebleeds up a little farther in the back. And you don't get that much
Mhm.
in modern movie theaters. And it really goes to show for like, I guess it just really depends on like how, financially how what area does. Because I've been to movie theaters where you basically get a recliner, like a really nice chair in some of these cities. I have to go an hour to just go to those types of theaters. you
Mhm.
know, theaters close to me, it's the old-fashioned pleather seats, like smack next to each other. You get no elbow room. Sometimes you just get the really crappy ones. Look like the feels like a school chair or whatever, or auditorium
Mm.
chair. It's I guess if you're paying for the luxury of it, it's good. You know, but
Mhm.
I feel like there's a little bit of a niche to still have like the old style theaters, and I do like how Jenna, is it like an older style theater where it still has like some of the, I don't want to say avant-garde or gothic type of
The architecture.
Um,
stuff, because that's at least
I
that's the theater near me. It still has some of the gothic type stuff to it.
I actually don't know, and this is kind of weird to say. I'm not actually familiar with like Gothic architecture that much, so I don't know the
Mhm.
intricacies of it, but it's just all I know is
It's like
that
all the swirlies and stuff.
I I mean maybe I don't know.
No, I
It's
get it.
I don't know, but all I know is that all I remember really from it is that it's a single screen theater from the late 1940s. That's really all I know about it.
I
But
Yeah, this is another thing. It's a dumb thing, at least for me, is I like the aesthetic of like this 40s and 50s, maybe a little bit 60s, where they want to look futuristic, but obviously this is like 1940s. Everything's made of steel and metal or tin, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know if that's how yours is, but I can. I guess you would have to send me a picture of it so I can
Yeah.
say. I will say
But
the gothic type of theming I'm talking about is where they have like the reliefs like at the top of the
oh
theaters or
yeah.
like the pillars. Sometimes they might have like curtains. It just really depends on how old the building is. Because like Bay City, it's a very old town. Bay City is a very old town. We have structures that go back to like the 1800s and stuff. The Bay says like 200 plus years old, I
Yeah.
think, or
Yeah.
at least I wouldn't say 200 plus years old, but
But
it's still old.
uh actually when you were speaking about film festivals, I actually think that at least with discovering like different kinds of films, I feel like
Mhm.
film festivals are a good way of discovering new and unique stuff. And at
Mhm.
least
Yeah,
for some of them, they do have a very specific taste, not just,
yeah,
and I'm not just referring to like, it's not just referring to some festivals that revolve, I'm not just referring to film festivals that revolve around a specific topic like horror or mediums like animation. Just
yeah.
like it, and this is just from like me, my experience
Mhm.
of trying to submit to film festivals recently is that it's really just challenging
Hmm.
because not only are there a lot of submissions,
There,
but they only ever choose a handful of them.
well,
And
some
because they have a very specific sort of style or taste that they want to do, it can get kind of a little bit competitive. So that's uh
it, some of these film festival movies do want to be a little bit avant-garde and that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to say they're trying to be they don't want to be flashy, but they don't want some do come off a little bit of pretentious. Obviously, and yeah, we've kind of discussed this a little bit behind the scenes. Another good thing about film festivals is that you can have, foreign films or different like types of smaller, less accessible films than you can in America,
yeah.
where
Mhm.
the American cinema, the American movie is very America specific elitist. It has to be made here. It I can't go to a foreign film, i.e. like go see a I don't know anime movie or like some dubbed movie in from like overseas because the market only makes that like a special event. You have to buy special event tickets to go see this type of movie because America has a like a stranglehold on the market of cinema in the whole world. Realistically, it's not even just an America thing.
Yeah.
They have it's not really a special event like for like some random guy in Croatia to go see Avengers or whatever because like the market's like all over the place. I'm saying Croatian, it's just like a random example, obviously.
Mhm.
You know, but they still might have like the movies that they made there, but you barely ever going to see those movies outside of that country.
And
That's why a lot of these like other type of movies are special events. I.e., you take like for example, Fathom Events does
oh
airings
yeah.
of specific foreign movies. I've gone to seen a couple. I've gone to see Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Digimon. Yeah, you can kind of tell I'm seeing my special interest, but still, it applies to other foreign movies because a lot of these foreign movies are, for one thing, you know, they America doesn't have the same standards. They have higher standards for filmmaking in
Quote
some
unquote
cases,
higher standards.
higher visual standards. Let's say
Yeah.
that.
But and this actually brings up to another point. It's it's hard to find foreign movies and shows because of things like country exclusive TV channels and how basically American pop culture took over almost every theater section in the world, at least except for Bollywood, which I think is,
Oh,
if I remember correctly, is
yeah.
just as massive, if not bigger than Hollywood. And it's like, I love to like watch these kinds of movies and shows from different countries just
Mhm.
to understand the specific flair, the specific styles that they have. But it's like I don't want to go on to a suspicious looking website where I basically need a secret code to get in, or else my devices are going to get infected. So I look into independent studios like A24 and Neon and streaming
Yeah.
services like Netflix and Hulu that do help distribute foreign films and shows. And those like
Mhm.
they're it's fine. Those are things are fine. But
Mhm.
sometimes when a foreign film does catch the eye of America, Hollywood and these streaming services will just remake it into an American
Yeah.
setting or
Yep.
something else regardless if it was in English or not. And it's like that's kind of really reinforcing how America just wants to keep everyone in an echo chamber, but you know.
What?
And
Yeah.
and and even if it isn't remade into an American setting, it feels like we're only really getting a small handful. I feel like there's only a small handful that are really breaking out into the American media. And that same American media, like I said, is basic like actually like you said, is basically taking over the media of some
Hmm.
small countries,
Yeah.
but sometimes won't even provide subtitles for a country specific language
Yeah.
due to a lack of funds and interest. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a mess. It's an entire big mess. And this very much often happens when well, unfortunately, this often happens when you're dealing with different countries and cultures.
Because I know at
Mhm.
least two, three Bollywood movies. I'll say one at least. I believe it was Bollywood is RRR, right? Something in Revolt.
Actually, it may be Bollywood. I don't know.
I
It
think it
sounds
was. It was a very large movie overseas. Like massive, like even getting like overseas product from other countries.
yeah.
So it's yeah, I it
But
it oh no, it wasn't. I don't know if it would be Bollywood. It's Indian Telugu. It might. I can't. I don't want to like be assuming, but
yeah.
when a movie is that massive that we're getting it in America, it really shows like the artistry of that type of movie.
But also another thing to take into consideration that there are some movies that might do well in some countries and others they may not do well because of things like cultural differences and specific cultural context. Like the the example that comes to my mind is with Shin Godzilla. It's like
Hmm.
I remember when that movie came out, it had a very mixed reception in America, and that was just because of cultural differences. It's like
Yeah,
that film was meant to criticize the Japanese government, and it's meant to go back to Godzilla's symbolic root
yeah,
of
because
being a personification of the horrors of the nuclear bombing on Japan in World War II. And it's like that movie was not playing around with that depiction at all. And the thing is, for some American Godzilla fans, that aspect just flew over their heads because we're so used to the Americanized version of Godzilla, just as a
Mhm.
giant monster without much of the symbolism.
yeah. Well, in a lot of people's criticism of that movie, it was too much humans. But the thing is because a lot of Americans they just want to see the giant lizard, you know. But
Yeah.
so you said something about it, and I know we don't have much time. I just want to at least get this out. You said something about that where Godzilla was an allegory for the bombings of in
Yeah.
World War II, just like Godzilla minus one was, where but they
Yeah.
did have be a lot more of the monster be there literally, but as like a symbol.
Yeah.
Basically, a
Mhm.
little bit more action oriented than the original one was, with the da 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 da. But if I remember right, Shin Godzilla, where the original movie was, kind of talking about the horrors of World War II and the bombings, the nuclear bombs of World War II. This one was around the time of the tsunamis and all that stuff, where it took out a whole nuclear reactor, and
Yeah.
and the way that the Japanese government handled it, so I don't think callously is the right word, but it was a very
It was just
slow.
poor.
Apparently it was a very poor reaction to like how slow they did that. So it's very
Yeah.
they are, for their time, they were making stories to reflect what was going on for their time, because when Shin Godzilla came out, it was 2016, and it wasn't 4 to 5 years prior to that they had those massive tsunamis. So it was, as they were doing something in recent history, much like the original Godzilla was.